Hey there, so today for this video I'm going to be showcasing my SPYRAL halqdon build, which if you guys haven't noticed, this is actually my first voiced over video where I don't just like slap some replays together and just go into it. And the reason I'm choosing to have a voiceover for this one is first of all because this video is long overdue, and I have had some people ask me on Master Duel Meta and Discord and stuff like, hey, how do you play this deck with the halqdon variant in it with, O-Lion and all the, extra deck payoffs that it comes with. And so I decided to kind of go over really quick over my deck list and just a few of my replays so you guys can kind of get the hang of like where I'm coming from. I have realized that in some of my replays, because I don't have commentary, sometimes some of my decisions seem a little questionable. So hopefully, like, me being here to let you know why I did this or why I did that could kind of help you guys with understanding that. But anyway, as far as my deck list, it's changed a little bit here and there. This build is available on Master Duel Meta, so I will be linking that on there as well. But for the most part, this is kind of what I've settled with. I've been playing this since Season 8, and now that we're in Season 9, I'm laddering with this as well, just because it's worked for me, really. And I also haven't had many duels where I've been able to showcase it, so I kind of just wanted to see if there were some cool duels I could get into with this. So the main thing about this variant that's different from the others is that you run an O-Lion in your deck, and the thing about O-Lion is that it can be a really shitty brick to draw into, but even when you do draw into it, if you have some kind of combo in your hand and you're not bricking, it does kind of work out sometimes. You're just usually ending on one less negate than usual, which is not saying much because this deck ends on like 3 of them with halqdon. So, well, 3 or 4 depending on what you consider to be like a negate, but it does end on 2 omni negates usually. So, losing out on one just because you're drawing O-Lion is not too bad, especially since Arclight, which is also one of our extra deck monsters here, ends up being a great floodgate for most decks. So that's good. In addition, Herald of Arclight also works as a great way to combat droplet because your opponent will usually not be able to send anything but spells and traps, because it makes it so anything that's sent to the graveyard as far as monsters go is banished instead. And it has to be from your hand or deck. So basically, it just means your opponent can't really grasp without banishing everything. It means droplet won't actually work, etc. So definitely it's a really good card to make up for a lot of the weaknesses that SPYRAL has as far as endboard goes, right? And we also do run Auroradon for, more resource management, really. Because Dawn makes a lot of our material, we end up not having to use our rescues as much. So like 90% of the time, if your combo goes off without a hitch, you're able to end with 1 rescue or 2 rescues if you're good in your graveyard, which then if you send SPYRAL Super Agent to the graveyard on your turn for whatever reason, you can then special summon him on your opponent's turn to pop any spell or trap. So one time it comes really handy is like when you want to pop an Eldritch back row with the help of Sleeper, you get 3 back row pops on your opponent's turn. It's really great against Flu too, or any deck that has like a really important field spell. You just like special summon Super Agent from the graveyard, and pretty much after that they're out of a field spell or out of a continuous spell trap like Fateful Adventure or what have you. So definitely it's a great card for that. And on top of that, you also end on an Apollousa, anywhere from like 2 to 4 mats, depending on how well you do. And you'll also end on Adamancipator, Risen Dragite. So I'm going to go over that as well when I start showing you these videos of how I did things. I'm going to go over how to summon all this on your turn, and just basically how to interact with other people's boards with it. So that being said, if you have any questions about this build, feel free to put any questions in the comments and what have you, and I'll be sure to answer them whenever I can. Alright, so for our very first replay, I'm going to be going over my halqdon SPYRAL list versus DPE Sky Striker in this matchup. And so in this case I was going first, so it goes without saying that for the most part I didn't deal with too much trouble. What I do like about this replay though is that because my opponent kept having some kind of toggle or interaction that they were holding off on, I was playing very, very carefully. So in this case, you're going to see just kind of how I play around negation as well, and how to deviate a little bit from the combo, just to make sure you always have some kind of backup plan. Because the cool thing about the halqdon list is that unlike the other synchro variants of Spiral, the choke point is not so bad. Because usually with the other variants, if you want to make sure that, you don't see any synchro monsters on the field at any point on the end board, you just hit Curious. Because typically if your opponent is going into Curious, it means that they're searching for Destrudo, which is going to turn on their synchro package, because then they go into Halq, and Halq searches Jet, and so on and so forth. So the cool thing is that in the halqdon lists, if somebody negates you at Curious, you're still able to go into Dawn just by having 3 monsters on the field, or a link to monster and just any other monster. So with Spiral, that's usually, if you can't get into Halq, it winds up being Barricade Board Blocker and Quik-Fix or Drone or whatever. Maybe even Jet if you somehow got him into rotation. So definitely for this first replay, I'm going to go over that a little bit. And as you can see in the beginning of this replay, it's just a Magician Souls and Revival combo. We got Magician Souls and Big Red in the hand, that's instant combo. And the beginning is pretty much the same as any other bit of Spiral comboing. I just do the usual. The first goal, of course, is to resolve Master Plan on and off the grave, so we can get a mission search and also a Spiral Resort and monster search. And of course we chain block with Barricade Board Blocker as usual. And so at this point, this is when I started getting kind of like a toggle from my opponent, and I knew that they had something that they were saving. And at this point, I played this deck enough to know that people will either sit here and save a negate for Double Helix or save a negate for Curious. And at this point, I wasn't sure which one, so I figured, if I'm going to try to play around Double Helix negation, I just want to make sure I have something in my graveyard, as far as in the form of a rescue, to kind of pick myself up again. And so in this case, I also had Sleeper, and I figured, I felt kind of safe. The thing is that kind of stunned me was that they actually didn't do anything as far as responding to Helix. So I figured maybe the kind of negation they have is targeted negation, like Valor or Imperm. And considering that I already saw their top deck and it was a Widow Anchor, it's probably a Valor. So this is kind of where things change a little bit. And usually when I go into 3 materials for Curious, I will use Barricade Board Blocker as one of my materials. However, in this case, I was worried that if I linked away Barricade Board Blocker and they impermed me at Curious, I wouldn't have any way to get into Auroradon to turn on my synchro engine in the form of Olion. So what I did instead was I did something I don't normally do when I run Dullahan, which is my level 1 rank Xyz, and it was doing the usual play for most Spiral players to use Linkuriboh to tribute out Quik-Fix in order to have Linkuriboh work as our 3rd dark. So definitely as shown here, I ended up using, here we go, I ended up using Ghost Trick Dullahan, Linkuriboh, and Spiral Master Plan instead of the usual Barricade Board Blocker, Master Plan, and Dullahan. And I thought they would probably negate me at Curious, but actually that didn't happen either. So I was really confused at this point. I was like, what could they be holding on to? Are they holding on for Halq? So at this point I figured, if they do end up holding on for Halq, it really won't matter because Halq is still a machine. I can still get into Dawn. The only thing is, by sacrificing Quik-Fix for Linkuriboh, I did have to use a rescue for Drone, as Drone would have been my machine for Dawn in this case, because I do like to save Jet for 2 rotations so I can synchro summon twice. So in this case, after making Apollousa, I figured I'd just get into Halq and just see what's up. They also didn't do anything in response here, and I was getting very confused. I was like, are you guys waiting for Dawn at this point? So I just go into Savage just to make sure that, if that is what they're waiting for, I have 1 Omni Negate and 2 Monster Negates to take care of whatever it is they have. But at this point, they actually finally use that Imperm and they use it on Savage, which I thought was really interesting and also kind of smart because now they have 1 less interaction that they have to deal with on their turn. And considering that Sky Striker is very spell focused, Apollousa doesn't stop them as much as Savage does. But now, fortunately, they had no other forms of interaction, so I was able to go into Dawn to at least create my other 2 negates. In this case, I was able to make Dragite, and I was able to make Herald of Arclight, which were able to hold the fort down pretty well, especially since Dragite is a great way to counter Sky Striker. It's just a dedicated spell trap negate. And then Herald of Arclight is also just an Omni negate that also does Floodgate a bit if any monsters are attempted to be sent to the graveyard. At least I'm able to deal with Forbidden Droplet at this point. So I still ended on a decent board. The only thing is that Savage wasn't live, so it was just a big beater. But I figured, you know, I still have some hand traps in my hand. What's the worst that could happen? So the cool thing is my opponent opened pretty cracked. I had no choice but to give him the Widow Anchor because it was just that, and like I think it was Ray or something like that. So it wasn't the greatest way to brick them. And at this point, they start engaging with my field. And so at this point, I ended up actually taking the bait and getting rid of Herald of Arclight because I wanted Maxi and other hand traps I had to resolve. And in this case, they chain Shark Cannon, so I chain Lancia just in case they try to banish something of mine. And I figured might as well chain the Maxi as well to just see what I draw into. At this point, they're really just burning through all my interactions, and so I end up using my Arclight and my Dragite to just stop everything. So at this point, I'm like, what else could they have, right? They already went through all their spells. And so they special summon Halqdon at the end of this chain. So they end up using him as material, and at this point, because of reinforcement of the army, they actually already had Ray, so at this point it was just, I didn't know what they were going to get into. And then they went to Zeke, and I think they forgot actually that I chained Lancia at one point in the chain, so nothing happened. This serendipitous Ash search kind of saved my ass here, because otherwise we'd have been here dealing with Engage all day long. And then after that, they go into Kagari, but I think realizing that Apollousa is still on the field and is still active, they just decided to scoop after this point. And even if they hadn't scooped, I drew into Forbidden Droplet. So definitely, hopefully that kind of shed some light on just how the deck works basically and how it deals with interaction. I definitely, if I did not have Ash drawn in this case, things probably would have gone very differently. But anyway, that's wrapping up the first replay. Alright, so for the second replay, this one's actually a bit like the first one in the sense that it's sort of a combo showcase more than it is a real replay of a cool duel or anything. But I'm also going to show you in this one how I play around Nibiru. And in this case I was lucky because I had a form of revival through Monster Reborn, and I still had an alternate combo path I could take as well. So in this case, in situations where I have Monster Reborn and I don't really have to use it, I like to save it just in case you know, shit hits the fan, or if I just want to use it on Destrudo so I don't end up getting burned for 4,000 damage. But in this case, it was very lucky that my Danger Pitch drone, because then I could just fish him out with Quik-Fix and then go full combo. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't even have to go into the Monster Reborn yet, and everything was looking pretty good. Up until the Nibiru came. And now, Nibiru is not usually a huge problem for this deck. We're normally able to extend right through it, but in some situations, it does become kind of a pain in the ass. In this case, I was a little upset because I really wanted a mission at least in my hand before I would be able to start playing, but that Monster Reborn actually came in pretty clutch here. And so I was able to use it and just kind of get right back up without a hitch. In this case, searching Super Agent is really good because by now you normally know the top card and you can turn on Quik-Fix in the grave. And so that's always why I say to overlay Quik-Fix in a Dullahan as soon as possible before you end up going into Helix, because people will save Nibiru for Helix usually. And even without that Monster Reborn, I knew that I had at least Quik-Fix live in the graveyard because I had Super Agent as a fallback plan here. So because I also drew into Destrudo, it just meant I even had less work to do. And in this case, I did something that seems a little unusual here, but I went into Barricade Board Blocker. And I didn't really go into him necessarily to send anything, but at the time, the way my grave was looking, I was worried that I wouldn't have any link to give Borreload Savage for his Borreload tokens, because usually he has to attach a link monster to him as material. And I thought, you know, with this shabby start that I've got, playing through Nibiru and everything, I may not have enough resources to pay for Sleeper. So there is a chance I'll have to actually burn through Double Helix in order to special summon Sleeper. So this was kind of my way of getting a link monster for Borreload Savage, and that's also why, following this point, I end up special summoning Halq off of Destrudo and Barricade Board Blocker. Alright. And so, another thing here, I did misplay slightly. Instead of sending Master Plan, maybe I would have been better off sending Super Agent, because he ends up just getting tributed here. and I would have saved on a rescue that I wouldn't have had to use on Master Plan. But either way, I do go into Borreload Savage Dragon all the same, and because of what I did earlier, I just didn't have enough mats for Apollousa, so I just kind of hopped right to it and decided to just go into my synchro stuff by going into Auroradon. And now I had exactly 3 spots, so I could just tribute out a token and Auroradon for O-Line. And in this case, I decided to tribute out Super Agent because I wanted him in the grave. And again, I wanted him in the grave as a form of spell and trap destruction, because I had a rescue in my hand that I could go ahead and send with Jet later. And so in this case, yep, pretty much I end up on almost an entire full board. The only monster I'm really missing is Apollousa. And, you know, as amazing as Auroradon is, I think it also sometimes is just really overpowered, and it would be a lot better not being in this game. But, you know, while it's still here, definitely take advantage of it, right? So, that being said, I end on pretty much a full board except for Apollousa, and in this case, my opponent decides to start with Small World. Now, I'm very lucky that I decided to negate this because they turned out to be an Infernoble pile, and they could easily Small World into a Lava Golem, which they did have in their deck. And in this case, because I decided to negate it, they chose to chain Droplet, and this is kind of a great way to just basically showcase why Arclight is so good here, because they're not able to send monsters. So all they did was send their spells, and that makes it so any of your negates can actually respond to it and turn off Droplet. So anyway, yeah, pretty simple replay, but basically shows you the strengths of this build. Alright, so a question I get asked frequently with regards to this halqdon variant is usually like, what do you do if O-Lion gets milled or if you draw him in your opening hand? Especially since this deck only runs one O-Lion, like there's no way to really special summon another one off of Auroradon. But really, it's not the end of the world. The token is usually used as material for Herald of Arclight, since normally if you mill it or if you have it in your hand, you can send it off Jet Synchron to get that token on the field. You can also bring out Veiler if Jet is in circulation, so that way you can make Savage off of Master Plan and Tuner, like effect Veiler, and then you can use the token in Jet Synchron to go into Herald of Arclight, which I'm going to be showing in this video since that's exactly what happens. We're only able to use Jet Synchron one time because we need him for our combo, and then we end up milling O-Lion off of the effect of Curious as well. So it wasn't a big deal for me to do that. The good thing is that there was not much in the way of interaction, if at all, really, so I was able to go in full combo without a hitch. But definitely it was a bit of a fragile combo starting out, and I'll show you why as we get started here. So as you can see from this hand, there's not much going on. There is a Small World, but I also was afraid that if I got ashed, you know, it'd be pretty bad. So I decided to take my chances by special summoning Nessie, hopefully, and seeing if I could draw into any cards. And so the good thing is, Nessie dropped Jet Synchron, which is great, because now I thought, well, if I'm able to get the Small World off, I can go ahead and search Quik-Fix, and then have Jet send Master Plan to the graveyard, and then have Quik-Fix fish her back out with Big Red. So that works out, and fortunately there is not any interruption as far as that combo starting line. And with 2 Ash Blossoms, I still had another one to protect me from, say, like a Gamma or a Maxi, though I suppose I would have seen it by now. And at this point, we just go into Barricade Board Blocker to activate Master Plan's Graveyard Effect. And so we chain link 1 Master Plan, chain link 2 Barricade Board Blocker, and just like that, we end up sending that rescue that we searched off of Master Plan earlier. So everything is going great. The rest of this combo is pretty much standard Spiral combo up until we get to Curious, and then it's time to start building board. We run into that little unexpected hiccup where we ended up milling O-Lion. So the thing is, when you do mill O-Lion, or when O-Lion's in your opening hand, there's really no point in making Auroradon. You just kind of shift to what you would do in any other variant, where you just use Master Plan and the synchros you're able to get on the field, or at least the synchro tuners, and after that you just build what you can. And so because O-Lion gives you a level 3 token, it is an easy way to just get into Herald of Arclight. And just like that, now that we're wrapping up here, we go into 3 darks. We send Curious, and there it is. So we send Astrudo, which is great. This was just for me to get the Veiler. And with the O-Lion there, It's okay. We just end up using Quik-Fix and Curious because those two cards are no longer needed, really. Especially since Quik-Fix is not going to be going into Dawn anymore. And just like that, we have 2 tuners on the field, and Master Plan is just going to go ahead and build Savage Dragon, as I stated earlier. And unfortunately, because Jet Synchron is going to get banished on this next go around, I had no way to send the Spiral Mission Rescue, but it would have just ended on the field, hopefully for grind game if we had to resort to that. Alright, and see, just like that, the only monster we really end up losing out on in this case is Dragite. But Herald of Arclight is still there as a reliable floodgate for your opponent, and you still have Borreload Savage Dragon as a general omni negate. And just like that, they scoop because they realize, I guess I just can't handle that endboard. And so definitely, if you had any hesitation about playing halqdon lists because of the fear of milling O-Line, hopefully that kind of assuages your anxiety a little bit. And definitely, hopefully that helped you guys as far as understanding this particular variant and how to play and build a board. And if anybody has any questions or any comments, please just let me know and I'll try to get to them as fast as I can. Thank you so much for watching this video and hope to see you soon.